show. Yesterday we were a little bit late. Today we're a little bit early. You know how the game goes. Excuse me. How is everybody doing? It's good to see the chat lively immediately. Let's drop a quick like in the video as well already, because we've got so many people waiting for Jim today. Jim is famous in the space. Who have we got today? Let's have a quick look. We've got Hafuel. Of course, we've got Hafuel. It wouldn't be a show without Hafuel. We've got Min, my brother from Vietnam. We've got Keozan, who says, good morning. Good morning to you. Lily says, I'm in it for the tech. We are all in it for the tech. And Hani says, yo, yo, yo. There's a lot more comments in there, but I'm not going to digress any further. I'm going to be bringing on our special guest, Jim Talbot. Jim, my brother, how you doing?
Hey, mate. Yeah, I'm all right, thanks. How are you?
Thank you so much for joining the NJ show.
Pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me.
No. It's really good to have you on board. We've got a bunch of comments in the chat already. People are going wild. They seem to really appreciate the content that you produce.
Oh, cheers, mate.
Yeah, 100%. So do you know what? We've got a lovely community here over on the NJ show. And, a lot of these guys, they respect Trader SC a lot, right? They've got a huge amount of respect for Trader SC. Now, they've noticed that Trader SC operates in a very tight circle. And there are only a few traders in the space that he really respects, typically traders who hold their own, traders who thrive off their own merit. And you know what? You're one of the names that my community sees, and they say, well, hang on a second. Jim is somebody who really holds his own. He's somebody who has a good grasp of the market in his own merit. So I was hoping that maybe today we could do some Bitcoin analysis, and maybe I could ask you some questions about your career for these guys here. Would that be okay with you?
Yeah, it sounds good, mate. Thanks for the intro.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So I guess the first question I want to ask you is, how long have you been into cryptocurrency?
About 4 years. 2018 I got in during the sort of peak bear market. That's kind of what molded me, I guess.
What is it that interests you about crypto? Is it Bitcoin? Is it Ethereum? Is it altcoins?
Initially, when I got in, I was interested in Bitcoin as like an alternative place to store money. Like kind of what's playing out in sort of the world now, currently, economically and sort of socially. I kind of was intrigued by it in that sense of it being some sort of way of regaining self-sovereignty of my own finances, etc. I'm not particularly fond of that view still now, but that's at least how it got me interested in it.
Okay, all right. The thing is, there's a pretty big jump, because I love what you're saying about Bitcoin. You said, yeah, you got into it, you were looking for a store of money. Now we fast forward 4 years later and you're trading the crap out of it, and you're doing a great job at it too, by the way. So let me ask you a question. Can we get some Bitcoin? Would you mind if I pop your screen up and we get some thoughts on Bitcoin, maybe on the higher time frame or maybe on the lower time, whichever you're comfortable with, but just for these guys here.
Sure.
I tell you what, do me a small favor if that's all right. So I'm going to remove the source. When you go to settings, right, in general, click on live stream quality and put full HD.
Okay.
Guys, if you're in the chat right now and you're enjoying the content, please make sure you're liking the video. Leave a lovely comment for Sir Jim, and make sure you're subscribing if you haven't already subscribed to the channel. Thank you everyone for tuning in, who's tuning in live, and thank you for all your support. It's great to see everybody here.
I'm not sure if that's changed it or not. Has that made any difference?
You're gonna have to share your screen one more time so I can accept it.
Ah, right.
Yeah. Thanks for waiting, everybody. Let's go.
Is that good?
Perfect. Yeah, perfect.
Oh, sweet. Right. So I suppose I'll talk about how my thought process on the market. So at the minute, like I kind of shift my focus when it's a new monthly open, because it's usually when, the liquidity is sourced for the sort of the rest of the month, basically. So I have been short well, I've been short on Ethereum actually, but what I would say is, like the likelihood is, the high isn't often put in on the first day of the month, basically. So then, with that sort of thought process in mind, I'm thinking where's it going to draw liquidity from to protect? Because my bias is to the downside on a higher time frame. So I'm thinking, where's the stop run going to be, and the potential for where's the monthly high going to be put in? Because there's so much liquidity below that I kind of get the feeling that that's where we're gonna go to over the next couple of weeks. So then I'll hone in on the lower time frame. We've had a bit of a squeeze this morning. So then I'll start thinking about what my levels would be. So where are we? It's pretty evident. We have got this equal lows on the weekly, this weekly open.
Yeah.
That's sort of prime target. It's a case of, do we sweep that and then go back up? So basically what I like to do is I like to trade extremes of a potential range, especially when it's the start of a month, because the EV is so high. So it's a case of it's reacting to price and not predicting. Like, I don't want to take a position here betting that we trade down here or down here. I'm going to wait for price to get up to these or down to these regions, because the EV is so high. Where are we? So this is the high, obviously, of September so far. So if we plot that, change the color. Basically, if we roll over here and sweep these lows, I'm going to take a long, basically, and I'm going to at least target a sweep of September's high, and then extended targets up here with these equal highs. And then vice versa, if this decides to consolidate with the daily open, comes up here, maybe takes all the highs, which I could see, test this block here, I'd take a short right down to there. So that's the two trades, and it's basically a case of waiting for which entry it gives me first. So one of my rules to live by is to not diddle in the middle. That's one of my favorite sayings.
Well, do you know what, bro? I've got a bazillion questions that I want to ask you, but I'm going to try and limit. I'm going to try and limit what I say. You've already done something there, which I want you to talk to the guys about, if that's okay with you. So you've marked out a plan for Bitcoin, and you've given this plan away to all of these lovely people here for free. But there's one question that I have for you, which is, within your plan, you've said, we're in no man's land right now. I'm not taking a trade here. I'm not going long and I'm not going short. I'm going to wait for my plan to unfold. Now, do you ever get into a situation where you're like, where price is chopping exactly where it is right now, and you've got your plan, you've had your plan for ages, and the market is just making you itch, your hands on the mouse, and you're just itching to go long or go short just so you can be in the position? Have you ever felt that before, or maybe in your earlier days?
Definitely, yeah, certainly in my earlier days, you get trigger finger impatience, and also you just don't really have a good grasp of how market. The thing that kind of was my big breakthrough was learning about auction market theory and how price gravitates towards a price that most people are comfortable transacting at. Like, it's like any other market. It's like a used car market. If you sell a used car at 10 grand and you got a bunch of interest, it's probably too cheap. And then if you try and sell it 20 grand and you get no interest, it's probably too expensive.
I see.
That sort of happy medium is like the 15K, let's say. So it's the same with an auction, with the market. So I look at these charts a lot. This kind of, this shows you the distribution. And you see the point of control is here. So if I overlay the candles just to make it a bit simpler, basically, the value where people want to transact the most is right now is 15. Oh, we'll do Bitcoin actually. Just obviously I'm talking about Bitcoin. So we're right at the place where most people want to deal with Bitcoin, and that's not where I want to deal with Bitcoin. I want to deal with where people aren't interested, because you're increasing your expected value. Basically, what I'd do, I'll draw it on a chart. So if we draw that level, this is the no man's zone. This is the point of control. Basically, what happens if you enter a trade here? It's 50-50 expected value. I treat it kind of like poker. You play, you find the odds, if I deal with a trade here and here, I'm probably increasing my expectancy by at least 20%. So, probably 30%. It probably skews the odds in my favor to 80% or 70 or 80% likelihood of winning at these zones. But if I take a trade here, it's 50-50.
Got you.
So,
Bro,
but yeah.
this is such a like what's the word I'm looking for? This is such a refreshing take on what we usually have here on the end. I've got to say I've seen volume profile before, but not live in action. You've given us a lower time frame trade. You've shown us how you've looked at it. You've given us why we're in no man's land, why you don't want to trade. This is a really refreshing take on the market. How did you get towards this? For people like myself, we focus on price action, but without all the indicators. We use support, resistance, trend lines. I rarely use volume at all. So how did you get to this? Going from, I mean, where did you start? If might be the better question. Sorry, I've just got a billion questions. Yeah.
Well, I think the big thing for me is I started on the lower time frames, like the 1 minute, the 30-second scalping. And it's just basically screen time, and you get a sense for what the market's doing. And basically, when I think about the market, I always try and think in terms of how a market maker is going to provide liquidity and how they're going to position themselves to not be offside. So, for example, like these two red zones, this is obviously where, and this comes from experience of making bad trades myself, knowing where bad stop placement is. Like if I short any of these highs, it's obvious where everyone's stop loss is. You put your stop loss here. And vice versa, if I long the week open, I'm going to put my stop loss right below. So what happens? And basically, what happens is stop losses are market orders, so they trigger up market. So what happens in that scenario is the market maker is going to provide liquidity to fill those stop losses. Okay, which is why you get reactions off them, because the market will then move away while they offload those positions, basically. So I've learned just from trading the low time frames, where stop losses are, where you're going to get the reaction, and I try and follow the market maker as opposed to the traders.
Wow.
So it's very contrarian. I'm a very contrarian trader.
No. Like I said, the word I'm looking for is refreshing. I should have probably done a little crash course with you for 15 minutes before we jumped onto this stream. This is fun. This is amazing. This is really, really refreshing. So, I mean, we've looked at Bitcoin. Is there any other charts that we could potentially look at? Yesterday, I'll give you an example, right? And I'm sorry to deviate the conversation, but we did an episode yesterday on inflation and how it's defeating the common man, right? And I spoke about sort of what the lower class, the middle class are to expect over the course of 2023 in terms of day-to-day lives. I had a look at the Nat Gas chart yesterday. Do you look at oil by any chance, or do you have any other, maybe the ES?
No, I do. I keep an eye on the ES and the Nasdaq.
Would you mind charting one of those for us, and maybe
Sure.
taking a look, giving us some of your thoughts?
Yeah. So.
Thank you, Jim.
Pleasure. So basically, this is some free sort of edge for people. Is this is when futures opened, on a fresh monthly candle. The likelihood is this is a trap setup. Whenever you get a move down with no excess above the open, the likelihood is this is going to at least wick into futures, into cash session 2:30 our time, and take out this. It pretty much happens. I'm trying to think where's the last 6 o'clock. So often it's it's a trap. So this was the futures open here, and you see how we traded above the open in in pre-market, and then trade below it. Same again here. Okay. Opened here, traded above it, back below. So this is a big, this is very common. It's very common. that the
Yeah, I see what you're
first,
saying.
yeah,
Yeah.
basically it traps the pre-market, and because it's a fresh monthly candle, the likelihood increases massively. It's like over 85% probability that we trade back above here.
So
Um,
probability seem to be a key word for you, which it should
yeah,
be for any trader, obviously, but just in the fashion that you use it. Like I say, it's a different take on what we're used to here on the NJ show. So, the way that you talk about probability is quite different than what we're used to hearing.
yeah. My focus is all on expected value and percentages of likelihood of winning, because a lot of my trades I take a one-to-one risk, but the expected value is skewed in my favor to 70-80%.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, one to one is one to one is very underrated. It's very underrated. I think people often they want to make quick gains. They want to 100 times their portfolios at the speed of light, so they don't really give precedent to the one to one ratio. But
Yeah,
there's a question in the chat here, and it seems like a decent question without revealing too much. Of course, Jim, we don't want to take all of it, but what other indicators do you use out of interest? Just the ones that you can talk about, that is.
sure. Well, I basically keep it fairly clean. The only reason I have these is just for a visual aid of where to do business. Like, for example, this is quite a nice bottoming structure into the bands on the Nasdaq. With the RSIs losing momentum on each low. We've got a flat open on a new monthly candle. This is a long setup all day for me personally. So it's just visual aids, but the main indicator I use is the momentum oscillators, because like basically if momentum's telling me one thing and price is contradicting that data, then that's kind of where I like to jump in. Um,
No, well said, well said, well said. Well, hopefully that answers your questions, KAR and Min. Please, guys, please do smash the like on the video. If you haven't subscribed, bottom right hand corner, it takes a second. It's for free. Let's get the NJ show up to 4K subscribers. Jim Talbot has come on the show out of his own kindness to do some lovely, lovely work for you guys, to show you guys what he's doing. And we all appreciate it here on the NJ show. So make sure you're dropping your comments in. Show some love to Jim. Give him the same respect that we give Trader SC or Trader XO when they come on the show as well. Let's go. Let's get the comments going. Jim, I've got another question for you, brother.
sure.
And we're going to zoom out a tiny bit as I ask this question, right?
Yep.
How low do you think Bitcoin can go? And I know that's a very vague question. I know it's quite opaque, to say the least. But just in terms of, I don't know, we spoke about probabilities, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what are the probabilities of Bitcoin going to however low you think it can go?
Sure. So I judge the market as fractals. So it doesn't matter if I'm looking here. It doesn't matter if this, if I ignore this bottom band and ignore the price, and I just look at this as market structure and fractals, I can analyze this as it was a 15-minute time frame chart or a 1 month time frame chart. Okay. So if I was to judge this as a 15-minute time frame, and I was taking if I took a 15-minute short off this, yeah, I would be targeting these lows if it was a 15-minute time frame. So me personally, I keep the same logic that if price is just a fractal, it doesn't matter what time frame you're on. Price should do the same thing on all time frames. Yeah.
Got you. And
So
where do those lows sit, if you don't mind me asking?
sure, it's about it's around. I personally think market. It's like I'm saying about auctions earlier. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so it's pretty obvious where people want to transact, and it's right around sort of 9,500, 9,600, in my opinion. Okay, and I personally believe it's going to take weeks probably, but there's nothing here to indicate that the bottom is in for me. Okay, it's maintaining lovely market structure. It's consolidating and showing weakness back at the lows after a relief rally. And if we were to draw this as though it was one of these charts, it would
Yep,
look,
we're with you.
it would sort of look like one of these. Yeah. So price always gravitates back towards the bulge, basically. So I've got to kind of keep that same logic personally. Like, people are going to hate me for saying it, but
No. Actually, I think the opposite, man. I think the people here, they all want to learn. They all respect your opinion, and really and truly, it's important to get people like you to come on the show and say this, because it helps people by warning them. A lot of people, they come on the show, they want to talk about altcoins and they want to talk about longs and shorts on the 10-15 minute time frames, but they lose sight of the bigger picture. And what they tend to do is, because they spend too much time on the lower time frames, they have no concept of where the market is going from a macro basis. So when
yeah.
we get people who are respected in the space that come on and say, well, you know what, we're looking at Bitcoin on the macro right now, and it looks like this is where, if this was a 15-minute chart, this is where I think Bitcoin would go. It's good for them, and it's good for me too. I'm learning a lot as well, if I'm actually honest with you. Now, you know what? I've asked you about the lows, right?
Hmm.
Where Bitcoin can go, and I've said on the show as well, it'll probably take somewhere between 3 to 6 months is where I expect Bitcoin to find its bottom, and then maybe if we follow the previous market cycles, perhaps we'll accumulate for another 12 months. We're going to need some sort of real change in the traditional markets to give Bitcoin some proper price action, so we can start pushing up for another bull market.
Hmm.
But if we fast forward, right? Let's say, for instance, we found a bottom, we've taken out those lows that you've mentioned, we've accumulated for a year, right? Inflation, we've got a hold on inflation. Maybe they turn the money printer back on, and maybe they just start shooting trillions of dollars back into the market. The S&P starts pushing up, Bitcoin starts pushing up, everybody's happy, everybody's making money again, even though we'll have consequences later. How high do you think Bitcoin could potentially go?
I genuinely have no idea,
It's a tough
honestly.
question. It's a tough
Yeah.
question. I know.
I, I, I'm not. I genuinely, I'm not sure if we'll ever see conditions as favourable as we've just had ever again. To be honest,
That's an interesting opinion. That's an
um,
interesting opinion.
that felt like for me personally, that was like a perfect storm. I think, with COVID and the relief and everything, I think it was just a perfect. It would have to take something worse than COVID, I think, to inject that kind of capital back into the market.
Well, I
Um,
tell you what, this is quite controversial, and I'm really glad. I'm really glad that you've said this, because it gives us a good segue for an excellent sort of debate. Now, for me personally, Jim, I mean, I've seen Bitcoin go from $300. I've seen it. I remember I was there when it hit $1,000 for the first time, and everybody was like, "This is it. This is where it's going to pop." We've gone from 10 cents to $1,000. Can Bitcoin do anything more? I was there when it hit $3,000. That's when I started making my first big buys, and I watched it go to 20,000. And I didn't ever think that 20,000 was something that it could do. Um, then obviously in 2021, I saw it go to 69K. So, why would you think that, even irrespective of the conditions? I know the conditions are kind of what make it possible and impossible, but irrespective of the conditions, don't you think from a wider perspective, like a 2 week time frame or a monthly time frame or even a yearly time frame, that Bitcoin can't go higher? I mean, technically it's still bullish, right? I mean, from a charting perspective.
mm, yeah, I don't. I just think you get to the point of sort of it gets incrementally harder the higher the market cap goes to lift the price.
Mm, hmm hmm
I'm more of the opinion that and you could say over the next 10 years it's actually a bullish, it actually gives Bitcoin a use case. If like I'm talking about again, I'll go back to auction market theory. You know, everyone thinks due to the fact that Bitcoin has a fixed supply, it means people have this notion that price, because of a fixed supply, price has to do this. Yeah, this is its trajectory. Um, but the thing is, supply demand mechanics don't work like this. That's why we have recessions. That's why we have bull markets and recessions, because you get to a point where the maximum amount of demand is entered the market to where it overrides supply. Sorry, to where supply overrides it. Yeah,
hmm
there's no, you've got, it's it's just the laws of like money markets, really. You know, you can't have this kind of growth, really. So my thought process is like, what if Bitcoin actually stabilizes where it finds an equilibrium? I don't know where it could be. It might, it might be here. Um, you know, as an auction, we've tested the 3Ks, lots of demand.
Hmm.
We've tested up here. What if we find a balance right somewhere in the middle, and the volatility diminishes over the next 10 years to where it does this, and then you've got the argument for, is it a store of value? Is it somewhere that you can actually park your money and it's relatively stable, um, and it finds an equilibrium where people are willing to sell and people are willing to buy?
Don't you think
Because
that? Don't you think that? Fundamentally, I know that we're talking about technical analysis. I appreciate that, but from a fundamental perspective, and we don't need to do a deep dive into it, but in my perspective, what really sort of built a foundation for Bitcoin was the fundamentals. That's the reason why we saw a follow through in price. Now, each cycle we've had sort of we've had new projects within the ecosystem that have helped crypto grow as a whole, right? And every sort of bull cycle that we have, we get closer and closer to sort of cloning or creating a new sort of financial system. I'm not saying it to replace the current financial system that we've got, but to coexist alongside it. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, Bitcoin is just an experiment, right? But don't you think that given that each cycle we've been making new highs, each cycle that we've had, the ecosystem continues to grow. Each cycle we continue to get more market participants. Don't you think that those factors alone could help fuel the next cycle? I think personally, the next catalyst that we have for Bitcoin really is the 2024 halving. Now, between now and then, the Fed will need to do something, or something will need to change, or something will need to get better within the current financial mess that we're in order to give this thing room to breathe. But if, and this is a massive if, right? And I believe it's an if that I'm allowed to talk about, just because we're in a recession, right? If the Fed were to get some sort of control over this market, then don't you think it would give Bitcoin more reasons to start pushing up for a brand new bull cycle? Or do you think this could really be the final cycle?
I don't necessarily think it's the final cycle. I think, me personally, I've shifted my sort of fundamental bias of Bitcoin. Like, I joined because I wanted it to be something that it didn't materialize into. But now, for me, its fundamental value is in its volatility. Like, I don't see why it's a bad thing that it can be, its main use case can be a money printer, based on the fact you can make a lot of money trading it.
Yeah, no, you've said it
So,
perfectly.
like, for me personally, I don't care if it goes to 100K or a million. Like, as long as it gives me good intraday volatility, I don't really care what price it's at. And I can't fathom. I just can't fathom like people sustainably buying Bitcoin at 100K. It just seems implausible to me. Like I know that it's finite and everything, but you still, if there's 20 million Bitcoin, and it doesn't matter if there's more people that want to sell it at 100K than buy it. Like,
No, no, look, I completely agree. Like I said, this is a really refreshing perspective, because what I'm understanding by what you're saying, and for those of you who don't quite understand in the chat, make sure you're liking the video, guys. By the way, we've got 150 people here. Let's get over 100 likes if possible. What you're saying right now is you know you're okay with the concept of hodling. Like, people who want to hodl, they exist, and you're okay with Bitcoin going to zero or going to 100K. It doesn't bother you, as long as it gives you that volatility so you can continue to trade it. And now that I'm getting a chance to really sit with you and really discuss these things, I'm sort of seeing why people love your trading style. um in my community personally, I've grown through cryptocurrency by waiting for the bull markets, and when markets are sort of flourishing, and when there's a lot of market participants, that's when you have the ability to go down the concept of altcoins that help bring more value to the crypto ecosystem. find the fundamentals that sit behind those altcoins, and then long those altcoins, and those altcoins tend to give the big returns that yield most of where my portfolio comes from. Now, what you're saying is you don't care whether Bitcoin goes to 0 or 100. As long as it gives you that volatility day in, day out, you will trade it. And that is where most of your returns come from. Is
Yeah,
that right?
like as long as there's volatility, my fundamental belief in Bitcoin is its volatility. I'd happily shift my fundamental narrative of Bitcoin if, for instance, like if I look at this chart, this isn't something I want to hodl. This isn't something, this isn't a long-term hold for me because it's too volatile. Like when it's this volatile, you better getting in and out and making money as opposed to holding it because, like, you're losing money. You're losing money. Your cash value is decreasing holding this. The scenario in which I would become a hodler, and the reason I initially got into Bitcoin in the first place, if Bitcoin were to do this on a multi-year basis, it'd be so boring. But if the dollar topped out and the dollar started going down in value whilst Bitcoin went sideways, then this is a good hold. This is something I would hold. Okay.
Yes.
But until it does this, I'm using it to make money. That's its number one use case, in my opinion, until the volatility subsides, which I think that's a really long-term thought process for me, that the volatility over the next 10, 20 years I think price is going to stabilize, find a happy medium between buyers and sellers, and it then becomes that store of value in sort of the right market conditions where your cash isn't working for you.
Well, I tell you what then. I tell you what. Since we sort of it's not that we see crypto and Bitcoin in a different way. It's not that we disagree, sorry, it's just that we see it in different ways. How would you get on board then? Say for instance, right, we went to those lows at like $9,000, right? Maybe we even wicked below and we got something like 6 to 7K, as an example, hypothetically speaking.
Yeah.
How would you ride the trend upwards? How would you detect an uptrend? Because obviously if it goes from 6 7K and whenever it wants to break out of its accumulation, let's say for instance it started pushing upwards, what would the key signs that you'd be looking for on the higher time frame where you'd be like, okay, do you know what, this thing might start trending to the upside?
So for me, on the last bull run, I bought in here. I don't know if you know Magus Trades. Me and him, we got up
Yeah,
really early.
I respect Megas quite a
We
bit.
got up really early on this dump, and we went all in pretty much and bought everything we could, because it was just the way. So again, it's hard to look back and show you, but the order flow was very much, it flipped this massive high time frame level that we've been trading towards for 3 years. We flipped it. The RR was clearly defined. We got these nice wicks here, and the order flow. Everyone was shorting this. Everyone was shorting it. And then for me personally, I look for a candle like this. This is a big breakaway initiation candle, massive. Yeah, that's impulse. That's shorts destroyed. That's buyers stepping in. I think that's in line with when Saylor first started buying as well, potentially. I can't quite remember. But yeah, this is what I look for. High time frame range, big SR flip, huge short interest, and away we go. Because, the majority of the sort of excess we get in bull markets is fueled by shorts. Okay, it's actually sort of it's sort of more shorts getting squeezed than it is people buying in these moves, these parabolic moves. So basically, what happens is you get these ranges are for trapping shorts, basically. Okay, and
Wow.
the way we're set up right now, there just isn't the short interest in the system. Because people tend to short bottoms, and no one's really inclined to short this, which tells me you need that fuel to instigate a move, because if there's not the short interest, it obviously takes 3, 4, 5 times the volume of buyers to move it.
Definitely. So what you're saying is even if we did dump to the lows, whether or not whether or not Bitcoin will make a new all-time high or not, it just doesn't bother you. As soon as you see the things that you need to see on the higher time frame,
Yeah.
you'll make your decisions as and when. Is that what you're saying?
And yeah, and for me as a trader, um, I'm either collateralized in USD or I'm collateralized in the underlying. And for me, I'm happy to stay in USD and trade until one of those opportunities comes where, it's just like for me personally, my best buys have come when I've not even really had to think twice about what I'm doing. Yeah. I haven't really had to analyze. You get that gut feeling that it's a cheap price, and you just do it. Like that comes obviously with experience. But me personally, yet there's been no incentive for me to pile in. Too many contributing factors outside of crypto as well. I think to where risk just isn't. I've got no appetite for holding risk long term at the moment.
I totally agree. I totally agree. I mean, SE mentions this often as well. I mean, Bitcoin is such a volatile asset. It goes up in such a tremendous fashion. It goes down in such a tremendous fashion. It's difficult to get real sort of institutions on board that are willing to put a huge lump sum of cash against it, simply because it's consistently worth something else. Every sort of minute or two, you're getting volatility in Bitcoin now. If from November 2021, for instance, you get institutions that are buying in, they'll have no money left by the time we're at where we're at now. It just doesn't make any sort of financial sense to hodl the thing. But
Yeah.
I think it's revolutionary for people like myself, though. People who live in the middle class, the lower middle class, even the lower class. I think it's revolutionary for people like us. It's kind of like, we had the concept of gold. Many years ago, people used to trade gold. Literally, used to trade gold. Go to the market. You'll have materials that you can trade. You can use gold to trade. Then came the concept of money in itself, and now we've got the concept of Bitcoin. I think it's an interesting experiment as opposed to a change in the overall financial markets. But for me personally, I think that this thing can do what it did in the previous cycles. I think everything that's happening now is what happened in 2018 to sort of a similar degree as opposed to the same degree, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Just personally my opinion, just personally my opinion. And I think that, in the next cycle, 2024, 2025, maybe, it's difficult to say exactly when. The reason I say that is because that is when we have the next catalyst for Bitcoin. But
Yeah.
you mentioned some interesting things in terms of where we are right now. You said it just a second ago. You said where we are right now in the sort of current conditions that we're in. Do you think that you could talk to us for a few minutes about the current conditions that we're in? So, for instance, yesterday I spoke about a recession, right? Do
Mhm.
you have any advice for these people in terms of how to just live for the next year?
Correct. I mean, that's
It's a
tough. It depends on your situation, I suppose.
Yeah, it's
Um,
difficult. It's kind of difficult. It's kind of a weird sort of subject to really discuss,
yeah.
but it's one that I'm glad that we discuss here, because although it's controversial, it's something that affects us in the day-to-day world. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean? So, a lot of people, they didn't take profits at the top. A lot of people, they're quite wrecked, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. And in the last bear market, we had the same thing that we have now. In the last bull market, we had a bunch of hodlers, people that were coming in and buying anything that they could see, anything that was a penny stock, anything that was low in market cap. And now people are trading. They want to learn how to trade because the market isn't giving us that hodl opportunity, you know?
Yeah.
So a lot of people, they've lost a majority of the money that they made in the last cycle. What would you advise to them in terms of the next year? My personal advice to them is capital preservation. I think that right now a lot of people don't realize how deep the situation is, and it would just be good hearing it from somebody else other than myself. I
Hmm.
think for these guys. So what do you think, where the situation that we're in terms of the energy crisis that we're in terms of the recession that we're in terms of just the cost of living in general? What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
I kind of the opinion that it's only just starting to get bad. Sadly, I kind of am concerned that it's a vicious spiral that's gonna, just gonna keep getting exacerbated. It's like a thread on, like a, it's just unraveling. I think it has to sort of, I don't know. It just feels like there needs to be collapse before, I don't. It's not like something that can just turn around. It seems like pain is going to be like the sort of end. Sadly, I don't know how else to put it, but like it spirals because we've got winter coming up. We've got the energy crisis. We've got supply chain issues. We've got people not earning enough money in line with inflation. You've had an absolute unbelievable increase in sort of employment of jobs that kind of are overpaid and not necessarily crucial in this kind of environment, because a lot of companies bottom, profits are going to go down drastically, and they're paying a lot of people, upwards of six figures to do a job that's kind of dispensable. And then you got to think those people that have got these jobs over the last 3 or 4 years are now sat in mortgages that if those jobs were to go, then you're going to get mortgage defaults, and car payments are going to fail.
100%, 100%.
Credit cards. It's just a vicious spiral, sadly.
Well, this is the thing. So I'm so glad that you said that. We're pretty much on the exact same page with that then. And one thing that we're trying to think of here on the NJ show, and I ask it to everybody, well, everybody I respect anyway. What can they do to fix this? What can they do to change it? What are the options that we have that could help us stabilize this market, or to give people an opportunity to make money again? Because if the powers that be have brought us to the situation that we're in now, where people don't have money, we're talking about mortgage defaults, we're talking about the energy bills going higher, car finance defaults, people just not being able to live in a normal fashion, then what's going to happen is we're not going to have any money being spent in the economy. Therefore, we're going to get a decline in growth, right? We're not going to have any growth. We're just going to have a decline.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people don't really know this, but the last sort of 15, 20 years, the UK has been one of the slowest economies for growth in terms of just economy in general, right?
Yeah.
In terms of percentages, I think we're only in front of a few countries, and the countries that we're in front of are not countries that sort of do anything meaningful in the world. No disrespect, but the information is there. It's just a simple Google. So what can they do? My sort of opinion, and I know this is going to sound silly, right? But it's the only thing I can really think of is to just another bailout. Turn the money printer back on. Every year we get all-time highs for inflation. Every year we've got new consequences. The growth percentage has always been so small anyway throughout the last 15, 20 years. So, just turn the printer back on, I guess. Is that might be a little bit childish. I appreciate that. But what else could they do other than that?
I think this is the thing, and this is why my mindset and thought process is slightly different to a lot of people, which is why I get a lot of people that don't like what I say, but I'll say it anyway. Because this is the thing, people are trying to figure out what can we do differently? How can we fix it this time? How can we fix it this time? When the reality is growth always comes out of destruction. That's how the economy is built. You have to destroy it to then start from the ground up, because it's unsustainable. There's a limited amount of people that can inject growth into the market before that peters out, and then that's you can't have this like linear growth model. It has to fluctuate in order to reignite it. And sadly, I don't think there's any way. Like, obviously, I see what you're saying about turning the money printers on, but that would obviously risk hyperinflation. I kind of think you need to start from the ground up again. Sadly, and this is the cycle, and this has been the cycle for hundreds of years of boom bust, and I don't see it changing. I don't see any other alternative. I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen this time. And I think if people, just saw it for what it is, as opposed to trying to fight it and think of something different, and just brace yourself for what is coming, which is a generational opportunity if you have the conviction in what is about to play out. Because this is where you make your money. If you can sit on your hands and trust that the system's going to, flush like it has done every, 10, 12, 15 years, then, it's the age old, this time is different. This time it never is.
I agree, and oh my god, I'm telling you, it's golden what you're saying right now. I'm loving it. I know everybody in the chat is loving it too. I'm not able to share the comments because we're engaged in a conversation, but just another quick one, Jim. You mentioned that often be the case that you have an opinion and not a lot of people like it, but here on the NJ show we've made it a sort of a golden rule where everybody is entitled to their own opinions. Everybody's opinions are respected. So whenever you do come on the NJ show, bro, you'll always be entitled to your opinion and it will always be respected. That's the golden rule that we have here. It's our God-given right to have an opinion. You know what I mean? So a lot of value in what you're saying. Now, somebody in the chat mentioned that war is another choice. So if we're not going to turn the money printers on, if we're not going to replace the dollar, which we know isn't probably going to happen in our lifetime, what do you think of the concept of war? Could war help us out? I feel like war is what got us here in the first place, right? Russia
Yeah.
and Ukraine exporting oil and
Exactly.
energy prices going bonkers.
My thought process for the whole Ukraine war is Russia could go in there tomorrow and decimate that country in 10 minutes. Yeah. But there's no incentive for them to, because it's crippling the Western economy the longer it goes on. Yeah. Because the sanctions are actually hurting us. So Putin's basically got us by the balls, to be honest, I'll put it bluntly, by dragging this war out as long as possible. And that's what's causing this mess. So
do you think? So I apologize. I'm sorry. It's just everything you're saying is so good. Do you think, right, that if Russia was to ease up on Ukraine and the exports began, would that sort of bring the energy prices back down to a level that was sustainable, or do you think that it's just left now? It's left. The ship's left, and we're just sort of in a.
No, I think it would stabilize. But another thing is we keep sending financial aid to Ukraine, but we're not sending any troops. And you really got to question, why is that? Yeah, because it's in our best interest for that war to be over as quickly as possible too. Sadly, this is the reality of the geopolitical situation right now. Is you got a war that NATO wants ending abruptly, but they can't be seen to have that opinion, so we keep sending aid, which is doing nothing. And Russia's delaying and dragging out this war to destabilize our economy. Yeah, we're at war. Like we're at world war now, but it's a proxy war, an economical war. Yeah.
Yeah, I get you. I totally get what you're saying, and it feels like SC's in the chat. You know, sometimes SC comes on the show and I get flabbergasted a little bit. I suddenly start going away from being the host of the show to becoming one of the people in the comments because I'm learning too. But okay, so look, if we was to summarize, because I know that we've only got you for another 5 minutes, but if we was to summarize, we either, if turning the money printer on is not an option, then how do we bring this down? Well, if the war between Russia and Ukraine was to subside, that could help stabilize the energy prices, but also at the same time, we're not sending Ukraine any real support, because really and truly we don't want to go into an open war with Russia. And if we go into an open war with Russia, or if we sort of initiate some kind of threat, it might sort of alert other countries, and that may cause a domino effect, which may actually lead us into a physical World War III. Mm-hmm. Is that kind of what we're leaning towards?
Yeah, and me personally, with the situation as it is, I think the only thing that we can really do in the short term is to drastically reduce inflation, because we're in a cycle of decreasing demand now. We're heading for a deflationary environment, and the fact we've got skyrocketing inflation on one side, and then increasing deflation on the growth side, that's a recipe for absolute meltdown. So to be honest, I think the only thing that they can do is drastically reduce inflation, which is going to be a bloodbath. I think a bloodbath is how you get this under control, but sadly, it's going to ruin a lot of people's situations and lives. But this is the reality. I can't. Sadly, I don't want it. Like, I think people sort of get the impression that I want this to happen for some sort of weird sadistic reason.
Not at
But
all,
this
brother.
is
Not at
this
all.
is
You're
just the
educating us.
reality, and I can't see past the reality. And I'm deeply saddened by the situation for people that are less fortunate than myself, and stuff. But that's the only real fix I can see personally.
Jim, honestly, brother, it's been such an absolute pleasure having you on the show. There's a billion more questions I can ask you, but I know that we're a bit short on time, and I know that you've got some appointments that you need to attend to. Um, I don't have any other questions personally, but I do have one question, and it's one question that I tend to ask all the prestigious guests that we have on the NJ show. And for the audience here, Jim Talbot, will you be back on the NJ show in the future?
Yes, mate. We'll do it properly. When I've got a freer schedule, we can ramble on for a bit longer, mate. So yeah,
Fantastic,
yeah,
fantastic. Do you know what would be lovely? I'll tell you what, and this is just an idea I'm throwing out there. I'd love to get you on the show just because your opinions are so controversial in such an educated way. Like, you're talking, you've got your opinions, but they're educated opinions. I'd love to get you on the show with a few other people, and maybe we could have those controversial topics in the middle of that show, and we could all talk about it. Would that be something that you'd be interested in the
yeah.
future?
I'd love to. I always like hearing contrasting opinions. It's where you learn. So
Definitely.
yeah.
We could have you on. We could have potentially Charlie. We could have EXO, SC. I'm sure we could get something like that together for these lovely people here. Jim, I want to thank you once again for coming on the show. I want to thank you for sharing your opinions, for help schooling us. It's refreshing. You've left me a little bit flustered just because I've got a lot to go back and learn. I'm probably going to have to rewatch this myself just to sort of merge our opinions to get sort of an idea as to what I want to start thinking about in the future. Um, I'm glad that we found one disagreement. I think that there is going to be another bull market. I strongly think that there will be. I don't know how it will happen. I don't know how it will happen, but I do think that there will be. And at the same time, the the reasons that you have for a stabilizing market, for a market where volatility meets sort of a certain price point, the way that you see Bitcoin, very, very refreshing. I respect you a lot, Jim, and thank you so much for your time. Is there anything you'd like to say to the audience before you step away?
Just thanks for hearing me out. Appreciate the comments. Appreciate the time. Good chatting to you, mate.
Thank you so much, Jim. Thank you. Take
Pleasure.
care of yourself, brother, and we'll
Yeah,
see
you
you
too.
soon on the NJ show.
Cool. Cheers, mate.
Cheers, brother. Well, there you go, people. There you go. That was Jim Talbot. That was a fantastic, fantastic episode. I wasn't lying when I said, he's really left me a little bit flabbergasted. His opinions are strong, but as I mentioned, they're educated, and that is what we need more of on the NJ show. We need those educated opinions, and the way that he views the market, you can tell that he's I wouldn't say living in the moment, but at the same time he's taking the data that we have, the data that we have currently on the charts, the information that we're getting from all these Fed meetings and whatnot, and he's building his opinions and his thoughts through that, you know. So Jim is somebody that we're definitely going to need to have on the show again. We're going to need to get his opinions. We're going to need to get his thoughts. Brilliant trader, brilliant thought, brilliant thesis as well. Now, what I want you guys to do is smash a like on the video if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. We're trying to get to 4K subscribers. If you do appreciate the content, we do come live pretty much every single weekday. As we get closer to what I think is going to be the next bull market, I'll be coming on live more for you guys. We'll be talking about altcoins. We talk about Bitcoin, Ethereum. I'll be bringing more guests on as well. We should have Trader XO on soon. So if you haven't already, like, subscribe. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the next episode of the NJ Show.